All right, we are good. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that y'all are doing well and staying healthy. Um, my name is Josie. I'm the Programming and Operations Director for the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. And I'm very excited that we're able to have some programs during this challenging time and to welcome you all today. So today's session will be moderated by Bruce Brown. He is a professor at Radford University. We're very excited to have him. Just in full disclosure, this session is being recorded. We know that there's lots of people that aren't able to join us at this time that definitely want access to this information. So we are going to put it up on our YouTube channel after the fact, and it will be shared on our social media. So just so you know, if you would not like your face to appear in any part of it, you can turn off your camera. We won't be offended. Just want to let you know that's what's happening. Also, as we go through, if you have questions, please drop those in the chat box, and there'll be some time for Q&A at the end. But that's going to be your easiest way to do that. So please utilize that feature and make sure that it's on send to all. I know that's something that we sometimes run into an issue with. But yeah, if you have any questions at any time, go ahead, drop it in there, or any direct questions, you can message me directly. But yeah, I'll turn it over to Bruce and we'll get rolling.
Josie, thanks so much. I am a proud member of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, and I am honored to be asked to be a participant in this. My background really is 45 years in the Virginia Community College system. I was a professor of a program that emphasized entrepreneurship, and we actually kind of morphed our management program into an entrepreneurship to create the illusion, if not the reality, that if you operated as a business within a business, that's a good thing. And then I pretended to be a dean down at Whitfield Community College and retired in 2015. I'm part of the new migrant worker of the South. I have been an adjunct faculty member at Virginia Tech, Bluefield, and Radford University, and currently tasked with coordinating a venture lab, which is kind of an innovation interdisciplinary think tank to create entrepreneurs in a manner that they might not think about. If I'm a foreign language major, I've hooked students up with Volvo Logistics North America, who has an initiative in Canada, and they needed somebody fluent in French. And most of the kids didn't think that that might be a career alternative. So I'm real excited to be part of this today because I know the fabric of our economy is small business. I told Sharon and Josie it's kind of risky to put a former politician and a college professor in front of an audience, but I'll behave myself and be quiet and let this meeting take its course. My job is to kind of make sure it flows, and we have 4 components to it, as you know from reading your email. Amanda Forrester will kind of walk us through the small business administration programs as it relates to the PPP and the EIDL, which, you know, acronyms are part of the federal government piece of the puzzle. And then we're real tickled to have Jim McAllister with the First Bank that is actually right in the middle of authorizing and facilitating these loans. And then what I think is really cool is Josh Rosenberry, who has successfully navigated this process with Clay Corner Inn. And then we'll kind of close it out with questions and answers. And the chat room is open so we can see those things. You can type your questions, and we'll kind of go from that standpoint. Does that make sense? Thumbs up? Okay. All righty. Well, Amanda, I'm going to turn it on over to you. We'll kind of work at 15-minute blocks, and I know that's not enough time, but you know, it's what we'll do and make sure we get from point A to point B. So Amanda, I'm going to turn it on over to you to let you tell them a little bit about your all's role and where it stands and opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bruce. I am Amanda Forrester with the Small Business Development Center for the New River Valley, the Roanoke Valley, and Allegheny Highlands. And we do have an advisor right there in the New River Valley who switches time between Bradford and the Blacksburg Technology Center that's helping clients. And to give you guys an idea of what we do, we are a partner with the SBA. They partially fund us in agreement to also receive local funding to match what they're able to give us to offer free one-on-one advising for small business owners and entrepreneurs, as well as provide training and produce tools that are really helpful to run your business. What most people don't know about us is a big role for us is disaster mitigation and recovery. In our area, we don't have a lot of that. So you haven't seen that from us on such a public level as now. We every year there's some sort of disaster, whether it's drought or flooding that many of you may not be aware of, but we're working on the back end. But this is a very public disaster and of course impacts everyone. So our role is heightened, and we've actually stopped doing everything else that we used to do and are only focused on disaster mitigation right now, with exception of a Smart Start class for those that are wanting to jump in this crazy time to start a business. And we actually have lifted the fee for that, and it's going to be free and online on April 21st. But other than that, we're focused on disaster mitigation. And because we're an SBA partner, we often are asked to help facilitate any programs that they put in place. And in this specific case, it is the EIDLs that you mentioned, Bruce. And what that stands for is Economic Injury Disaster Loan. This is a loan that the SBA is very familiar with. However, with this particular instances, a lot of restrictions have been lifted, and it has become a different type of loan that they've had to put structures in place to support. So while it is your normal disaster loan that we see, we're very familiar with them. The federal government and the U.S. Treasury have just lifted a lot of the restrictions, making it difficult really for the SBA to process them, but is great news for our small businesses. Some of the things that have come out with this loan we've been incredibly pleased with compared to other disaster loans that we've worked with. I do want to preface it this morning though, I have breaking news for you guys, and you may be some of the first to hear this if you're not digging into the news overnight. But the Economic Injury Disaster Loan portal, where you apply for the loan through the SBA, has been temporarily closed. We know that the appropriations that have been set aside for this, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program, are running thin. And the U.S. Treasury and the SBA is urging Congress to quickly put together to appropriate more funds for both of these programs. But in the meantime, the EIDL portal is closed. If you have an application that has already been submitted for this loan, including a request for a loan advance, those are still being processed on a first come, first served basis. So if your application is in, it is still being processed. You don't have to worry about that. And if you're approved for a loan, either way you'll hear back, but if you're approved for the loan, you'll certainly be able to move forward with that if your application is already in. All we know at this point is it's temporarily closed, and that's what I hold hope for. They have very firmly used the word temporary. So while it could be bad news this morning, if you were hoping to apply today or in the coming days, that portal is closed. For those who may have already applied for the loan and aren't quite sure what it's for, because we did push people apply really before we knew much about the loan. But the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is meant to be a loan to support you during this downturn. So whether you're closed or you have a decrease in revenue, the loan is meant to help you pay what you normally would have to pay on a monthly basis. Your rent, utilities, any invoices that you have to pay just to stay open as a business. And I don't mean open to the public, but not having to shut your business down. And that's really what the loan is for, at a very low interest rate of 3.75% over and up to terms of 30 years. So it makes an incredibly affordable loan. And I've even encouraged clients, take the loan. It's like, it's a rare opportunity that you have access to a commercial loan at this rate, no matter when you started your business, which is incredible. So if you have the ability to be approved for the loan, it was a great opportunity to take it at that rate and terms. We certainly are in no means a no debt institution. We like for companies to take on debt when it makes sense. And in this case, it absolutely did. So we hope to see that return and open with more appropriated funds, because we want to ensure, and I know the SBA and the Treasury are really pushing that every small business needs assistance, and there's just not enough available, and we need to step up to the plate and help and get those funds appropriated. So we do anticipate that happening, and we're just going to watch very closely for that to make sure and continue to advocate for our small businesses. So with that, I won't go into detail about the economic injury disaster loans, because it doesn't make sense to do that with the application portal. But certainly if anyone's applied and they have questions, our group is available to talk to you about that. I'll share our website here at the end, so that if you want to hop over there, you can schedule an appointment with us, or we have a live chat where you can, if you've got a quick question, ask it and we'll answer the best way that we can live. And if for some reason we've stepped away, it'll send us an immediate an email, and we'll get back with you very quickly. Let me talk briefly about the Paycheck Protection Program. And I'm so glad, Jim, you are on the line as well to talk about from your end. We work very closely with many of our banks in the region who are also sponsors of ours, meaning that they help us match our federal funding. If we don't have matches, we don't get federal funding. And so many of our banks do that, and we work very closely with them to help educate clients on what their process is, and also kind of route people where they may need to be routed. The Paycheck Protection Program is meant by the SBA to be a program that allows you to cover payroll expenses and to keep people employed during this time. Now, of course, that makes the most sense for businesses who are still able to get work done. You may not be open to the public, your revenues may be greatly reduced, but you have a way to put your employees to work. You have something for them to do, and that would be very helpful for your recovery effort or pre-planning or whatever you might have your employees doing. It's a great opportunity for you to take advantage of funds that can pay them and yourself as the owner during the time. When you apply for the loan, there is specific calculations that you used. And just to be very general, it's based on your average payroll for the last 12 months or for 2019. You do have to be in business prior to February 15th, 2020. Okay, so if you opened at the end of February, 1st of March, you're not going to be eligible for these loans. But if you were open before that, meaning, and I want to be clear about this, you had a business license, you're registered with the state, and you have your EIN, okay? If an EIN is something you have. If you're a sole proprietor, you wouldn't have that, but you still would be registered with the state. And that's kind of that key point. You can't just be operating illegally and have access to the loans. You'll do a calculation, it's multiplied by 2.5. We can help you with that. I know the banks can help you with that as well, to really determine what your average payroll is, how many employees you have, and then if you're approved for the loan, which happens very quickly. And when I say that, it's not overnight, it's not same day, but in comparison to all the other loans that we work with, this is incredibly fast. You will have the opportunity from the time the funds get in your hand for 8 weeks to use those funds. 75% of those funds have to be used on payroll, and the other 25%, which we're really excited about, can be used for things like rent, mortgage interest, utilities, and health benefits. So it really can help cover a variety of costs that you have. We know that there are special snowflake circumstances out there. We deal with them all day long where it either isn't going to be enough money based on what's happened in the past, or you have a seasonal business where your employees go up and down, and so the allocations for this loan aren't going to fully help you operate during this time. And we'd be glad to work with you to show you other calculations that are available for seasonal businesses and things like that. And especially if we can take some demand off of the banks to help you with that process, so that when you go in for application, you're set with your information, and the banks will just confirm it and work with you to gather really proof of all that. You will have to show proof, payroll records and things like that. And so the Paycheck Protection Program is helping so many small businesses kind of stay afloat right now, especially with that large, expensive payroll. It's also helping people stay employed during this time, which is critical. We do know that, and I guess we ask for, folks are frustrated with they can't get money the same day, or maybe they can't get an answer from the bank that they're working with. Just to give you guys a sense, the SBA, along with our financial institutions, have processed more than 14 years worth of loans in less than 14 days. It's been incredible. And we hope to continue to be able to appropriate funds for that and get even more people assistance. But if you can imagine the overwhelming nature of processing 14 years of loans in less than 14 days, you can imagine what everyone is going through right now, including our financial institutions. So our biggest recommendation, first and foremost, if you want access to the Paycheck Protection Program, is to first look on the website with the bank that you currently bank with. Look on their website. Almost all of them, especially those in our area, have their website updated with what their process is going to be. If you find that they are offering the loans for existing clients, meaning you already have a relationship with them with a deposit account or other, maybe another loan or whatever other business you might be doing with the bank, then they most likely will have an online portal for you to apply through. Obviously, many of our branches are closed, and so everything is done online. And if you need assistance with that, we can help you through that process. If your business bank or the bank that you currently do business with doesn't offer the loans, there are other options. There are some banks who are taking in clients who are not current customers. Although I do want to make sure you understand that in order to receive the funds from this loan, you do have to have a deposit account with that bank. There is a process associated with that. It's not quite as easy as just opening a checking account. There are lots of things around money laundering and international crimes that dictate what the bank has to do to open an account and to confirm that you're a business. So be patient with that and understand that that's just part of really almost any loan process, but specifically for these, you will have to open an account with them. If you are at wit's end and can't find an institute to help you, there are online options as well. If you have interest in those, we have them listed on our website. We do want you to go through your local bank first. And if you're not able to get through that process, the online options, we have had great success with those from many of our clients who might bank with some of our larger banks who have stopped taking applications. And so if you need help with that, we can gladly do that. I'm going to leave it there because Jim's going to have a lot more on that. I just wanted to give you a brief of what those loans are for and how to get access to them and what to expect through that process. While this money is being released in people's hands very quickly, we know that we're all anxious and fearful, and a few days, 5 days, 6 days feels like forever. And so we're here to help you through that and to talk through it. If you need to run through your finances to look at projections, we can help you do that and help you make some of the tough decisions that you might have to make during this time. We can help you with that from a business perspective. So please feel free to reach out. Someone did ask in the chat if the Fixed rate was 3.75%. And the answer is yes for the EIDLs. So for the economic injury disaster loan for businesses, it's 3.75%. For nonprofits, it's 2.75%. And that is for the EIDL. The Paycheck Protection Program is a little bit different. Some of those funds, if not all of the funds, will be able to be forgiven if on the back end you have the correct documentation for the payroll and other expenses. Anything left over does turn into a loan at 1% interest and matures in 2 years. So that's kind of the details on those two loans.
Amanda, that's a great job. Appreciate it. Were you going to kind of throw up the contact information, or is that something you just send out a little bit later?
I could, if you give me a moment, I could throw that up, I believe, because I can share my screen here. I don't have it up at the moment, but if someone wants to start talking, I will pull that up for you.
Okay. Well, that's a very succinct analysis of kind of what's been accomplished in a very short period of time. And Jim, we'll go ahead and pass on off to you, my friend, because I think you've got the perspective of how to move forward, and if you're interested in the PPP and even with the others. So we'll turn it on over to you, buddy.
Okay, Bruce, thank you. And you all did a great job summarizing the EID loan and the PPP loan. And most of you, if you have been watching the news or CNBC or any of the channels this morning, you probably saw that the funds for the Paycheck Protection Loan is quickly running thin. In fact, we heard that it could run out today. I just got one approved this morning, thank goodness. But I've encouraged all my customers that are sitting on the sideline or thinking about applying for one to go ahead and get to your bank quickly, so that you can get it through the portal. Once you have an application and your bank puts the application into the pipe to SBA, it's called E-Tran. It's an electronic system where it gets electronically funneled to the SBA. Once it gets input and all the data is correct, like your EIN, your tax ID number, or your social if you're a sole proprietor, then the loan is approved and each application is given an account number and a loan number. And the banker would have that page documentation, and that basically freezes the funds for you. It reserves those funds for you as part of that $349 billion pot. So those funds still are available. We have approved several this morning. When the President Trump passed the law on March 27th, within 6 business days, the Small Business Administration had issued their ruling and their guidance in terms of how these loans were going to be handled. And as was pointed out earlier, to give you some perspective, in Virginia, in 2019, we processed 615 loans, SBA loans by 117 different lenders. Out of those 117 lenders, 87 of them had only done 1 or 2 SBA loans. They really did not have a relationship, so to speak, with the SBA, an ongoing relationship where they had an E-Tran portal already set up and they understood the rules. So when this new program came out, within 1 week, the SBA had developed guidance, an application, a process by which the loans would be applied for. We received our first application here on April 2nd. Give you an example, we actually had 2 applications on April 2nd, the day the rule came out. We sent applications out, we had customers send them back in, and we funded our first loan on April 10th, which was about a week later. We only got the note from SBA. We actually only got the note that was going to be used on April 9th. And so, again, this is like, I think Sharon said, the plane was left the runway and it was flying, and we're building the plane not on the ground, but while we're flying it. So it's been an incredible job by the SBA and the Treasury to try to make this thing work. The challenge that most people have experienced, the challenge is this. A lot of the community banks that you may bank with, we have great loan officers out there that you work with. Some of them had a long-term relationship and had a portal, so to speak, into the SBA, and some did not. And those that did not scrambled very much to try to get their portal, their E-Tran portal, up and running that week of April 2nd, 3rd, 4th, that whole week. And by the end of that week, a lot of them got the portal up and running. And that's what slowed things down a little bit, was that a lot of the banks that participate, over 4,000 banks have participated. Many of them didn't have a portal. So now most of them have a portal. If you go to your community bank or to a larger bank, most of the ones that are participating have got a process, as was pointed out. The application is very, very simple to fill out. Some people said they could fill it out in 5 or 10 minutes. And then we'll need, of course, supporting documentation primarily for your payroll, because that's really what drives the loan. So, you know, we're close to the thing running out, but we're hopeful that Congress will pass another round of funding. I've seen numbers of 200 to 250 billion. So if you're thinking about applying, if you have not already applied, I would be talking to your banker and see, number one, if they're doing the loans and what their process is. You know, our bank we are doing SBA loans, these PPP loans. We are doing some for non-customers that need the help. I mean, this money needs to get to Main Street, and it needs to get there quickly. So fortunately, we had 6 portals to E-Tran already set up by the time this thing started. And the first weekend, we had 500 loans approved on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We worked a team all night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, before the big banks even got in there. And when they got in on Monday, they crashed the site. And so that slowed things down. By late Monday last week, the site was back up and things started flowing. And so now you see it's really started gaining a lot of traction. So again, I would talk to your community banker, whomever you work with. They'll explain to you their process, and hopefully they'll get it done for you. Now, I'll give you some example. Community banks mostly are, and when I say community banks, I mean the smaller ones that are like 2 or 3 billion in size or less. That sounds like a lot of money, but it's not a huge bank today by today's standards. Most of them are fairly decentralized. That means the loan officers have loan staff in their office or close by where they can handle these things. As banks get larger, once they get to 3 to 5 billion in size, they typically centralize loan processing. They centralize underwriting, and so those are the applications that are going to the larger banks. They are in the process, but you may not, even your loan officer locally may not know what's going on. So one of the things we've seen is that the banks that have been able to get them done quicker are the smaller banks that are decentralized, where they have a loan staff locally. You're dealing with a loan officer. They actually put the loan in so they know where it is. And so those are some of the choices that you'll have to make if you're thinking about applying. Bruce, I think at this point, I'm going to see if there are any questions, and I'll try to answer any questions that anybody has about the program.
Sounds good. We've got a real active chat going over, so that's another way that people can post questions that are generalized in nature and also some specific things. So we'll kind of do that. Jim, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's about relationships and about being able to localize what you're doing. I think it speaks volumes that we've done 14 years worth of loans in 14 days. I'm old enough to kind of laugh at. I'm from the government and I'm here to help you.
Right.
This one that it's actually worked pretty expediently. And I will mention that this afternoon, Mark Warner has a Facebook town hall. It might be advantageous for people to talk with your legislator to let them know that it is working. We need some more help out there, because the whole intent of this is to keep people working theoretically so that they don't have to be rehired. And we're going to be on the other side of this at some point in time, and this is helping to try and facilitate that. Any real questions for Jim, or we want to move on to Josh and let him talk about his experience with the end? Well, we got the chat room going. Josh, I'm going to turn it on over to you, friend, and let you tell them a little bit about you. You've been in the bowels of the whale and have come out of it okay. So tell them what you run into and how it worked for you, buddy.
Thank you, Bruce. I'll be very quick because Amanda and Jim both have, been very detailed, and there's not a whole lot along the lines of the process that I can add. I can say that we were fortunate to act quickly. We do work with a small local bank. I spoke with them again yesterday. We actually signed our documents, and the funding is scheduled to hit tomorrow morning. So those funds aren't technically in our bank account right now, but they'll be in there first thing in the morning or overnight. But the process for the payroll protection was relatively simple. Sharon has, with the chamber, has said from the get-go to contact your bank of record or the bank that you work with. And, I also didn't realize the portal closed today. So I feel confident that those funds will be added to, but work with your local bank. Like Jim was saying, the smaller banks, everyone I've talked to, they have had a lot of luck with the smaller banks. In fact, the president even said that in one of his daily briefings a couple of days ago that small banks are the way to go if you can. I do know, again, our bank is actually not working with people that aren't already members, just because they're so inundated with applications for the PPP. So they're prioritizing, of course, their guests. So again, to Sharon's point, your bank of record is definitely the way to go, without a doubt. And Amanda hit on this. It's really, really important to note the things that you have to do for that loan to be forgiven. I wouldn't take any of that for granted. There are some very serious stipulations. I mean, 75% of that loan has to go to payroll. That's what it's for, within an 8-week period. I've kind of heard some talks here and there through online and various webinars and things of kind of moving that money around for other purposes. And while you could do that, it won't be forgiven. So I know that point's been hammered home as well. And then the difference between the payroll protection program and the EIDL program, that they are different. So yeah, we contacted our bank. National had the application online. We did what we could there, signed it, scanned it over, and the representative from the local bank right there in Blacksburg worked directly with the owner and myself. Gather your data. The data they ask for is relatively simple. If you use a payroll firm, then they can do it for you. QuickBooks, if you're a small business and use QuickBooks, QuickBooks is actually put a short or a link to the report that is required on right there in QuickBooks on your dashboard. So it will generate the report itself that they need. So that's, I wish everybody luck. I think Jim and Amanda did a great job. I think it's great the chamber put this together. All the work that the local governments are doing to help small business. I know from the lodging field, this has been really difficult, and it's not going to become undifficult anytime soon. We're all going through storms, but anyway, we're Clay Corner in Blacksburg. If there's anything I can do to help, if anybody has any questions or anything like that, I'll throw my email in the chat box. But again, kudos to the chamber, to local government. Bruce, Jim, Amanda, you guys are awesome.
Josh, thanks so much. One of the questions maybe for you and Jim, I know some of the banks have a template that's almost like a checklist, do this, 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 and this. But one of the questions, were there any common mistakes or glaring deficiencies that you all ran into that kind of boogered up the process any?
Jim?
No, we really, it's very simple. What we have been obtaining for the salary piece is the 941, the quarterly 941 for employers, which anybody who employs people will be very familiar with that. If you could just print off your 4 941s, and then there's a W-3, which you have to account for at the end of the year, which is a summary of the 941s. That's your salary amount. Now, there are ways that there are adjustments to that. If you have anyone that makes over $100,000, any amount over $100,000 that's in the salary bucket has to be eliminated. So for instance, if you had somebody made $120,000, you could only count 100 of that in your salary calculation. And so that was one of the tricky parts to it, Bruce, was to adjust your salary for the 100,000. You know, so that, and then the other question, and there was actually guidance even up until yesterday about sole proprietors and self-employed individuals. And so they're still building the plane as they're flying it. But as of yesterday, the SBA ruled that if you're a sole proprietor, you can obtain a loan. The way you prove your income is from a Schedule C. Most self-proprietors, if they're not a partnership or an LLC or corporation or sub-S, they report their income on Schedule C. And the way you also receive income often is by 1099. So for self-proprietors and people that are self-employed, we've been obtaining the 1099 from them. And as you know, the extension of the taxes has been extended out. A lot of people have not filed their taxes. So what do you do in the case of if they do require a Schedule C, but if you've not filed your 2019 taxes? What the SBA is allowing is for you to go ahead and fill out your Schedule C, even though you have not filed. Fill out your Schedule C with your income, which would be equal to, or it should reflect what you see on your 1099. Fill out your Schedule C, fill out your expenses, and we will use that to actually figure the salary and the net income for self-employed individuals. And that's how we've done it. So the one I did this morning was a self-employed person. I mean, they could not even apply until this past Friday. And the SBA has been updating the guidance on that as the questions have gone back into them. Well, what about this and what about that? Yesterday, they came out with the ruling that self-employed, you need to have a Schedule C. So that's kind of hot off the press. You know, the money is getting close to running out, but they're still issuing guidance and providing clarification on a lot of these items. So
Thanks,
I'm not
Jim.
sure if that helped.
That does help a lot because it is kind of a moving target. I know the conversation has been about the gig worker and the independent contractor, and they have folded that into this process to allow access to the money as well. I know Josie might be able to go in and make Amanda a co-host, which allows her to share her screen if she wants to pull up, but she's posted over in the chat area how to get in contact with her. The thing that's really cool is there's 50 smart people that are in tiles on this screen. And it really reminds me of Maya Angelou, it takes a village to raise a child. We're not in this boat by ourselves. And I think the chancellor talks about a moat, and that when there's plenty of water in that moat, all the camels around it are pretty good friends. Well, the water is not quite as abundant as it once was, but we still got a bunch of good friends around this moat that will help each other out. So I'm going to kind of see if there's any other type of questions. You know how you can unmute yourself as an Alt-A on your keyboard. So if you want to ask Josh or Jim or Amanda or me, not that I'm the brightest bulb on this Brady Bunch thing that we got going on, now's a good time to do it. But you got some great questions over in the chat room, so I'm hoping you're accessing that.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah.
Mike Barber, how are you this morning?
Mike, I'm doing okay. I'm glad I'm not in the mayor's seat anymore, though, so I applaud you.
Oh, well, I think my question was to Jim Mack, since he's one of the lenders on here. what is basic credit criteria for someone in a small business that may or may not have the highest beacon score or whatever we're using right now? Is that a disadvantage to them?
Mike, there's no credit pulled. There are no personal guarantees on the loan. So there's no credit part of it. What makes this so, enabled us to move so quickly is the Treasury has enabled the banks. They have told the banks that you can, we are the most, there are 6,000 banks. So that was the only way the Treasury was going to get this money out quickly and have a process for doing so. But what they did was made it extremely easy. You just have to prove that you were in business, that you have a tax ID number, that you have had payroll, and that you have paid people. So there's no credit background check. We don't pull credit for anyone. There are no personal guarantees. The loan is to the organization, and it is forgivable. The loan is at 1% for 24 months, and the first payment is not due for 6 months. So that means you don't have to worry about making a payment for 6 months. Now, during that 6-month period, the SBA will come back and provide some sort of a process by which you have to prove that you spent that money on payroll. And that's how the loan would get forgiven. So let's take in the case, Mike, of a situation where someone applies, they're a new business, they're not well capitalized, and let's say, for instance, they don't make it, all right? And there's a loan there and they can't pay the loan back. Let's say not all of the loan is forgiven. Let's use an example. Say we give them a $10,000 loan. And by the way, the average size loan in the program nationwide is $250,000. Now our area is less than that. Our average size loan at our bank is running about $120,000 to $130,000. But let's say we loan someone $100,000 and they go back and they only use $80,000 or let's say $70,000 on payroll, and they wind up with a $30,000 balance with the bank that's not forgiven by the federal government. The government doesn't pay that. Then there's a loan to the bank at 1% that must be paid in 24 months. If within 24 months that loan is not paid, or the customer can't pay it, or they go out of business or file bankruptcy, the federal government will pay that loan. So these are no risk loans to the bank. We are being paid a fee to do the loans. There's a lot of work that's going into them. There'll be a lot of administrative work on the back end, but by no means the banks are not getting rich making these loans. If you look at the fee plus the interest rate at 1%, the average yield to the bank is probably about 3.5%. And so that is a very, very low yielding loan to the bank. But it is a service. The banks are created and have the ability to make money. Mike, you were a banker, out of thin air. The bankers can use their capital to create money, and we are empowered in this nation to create loans and create the money supply. So with that comes responsibility. So while we're getting a low yielding loan, it's our responsibility to do this, to help the small businesses in our nation survive, to help them get to the next step, because let's face it, the banks are no better than the sum of our customers. I mean, we are no better than our customers. If our customers aren't doing well, the banks won't be doing as well. So I think all the banks involved in doing this are proud of being a part of it, are glad that they're doing it, and hopefully we'll get more money in the pipeline.
I think one of the issues and I've been in contact with a couple of small businesses, under 10 employees mainly. And I think there's a fear factor. I think the fact of most of them are professionals at what they do, or good at what they do, but they're just not very versed in completing this type of an application, and they're scared of what's going to happen with it. Yeah. Is there a percentage of the 2019 payroll that is loaned out, or is it the entire payroll? Or, I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, what the banker is asked to take the 941, the W-3s, or the 1099s, and estimate based on that what the 2019 income was. We'll take the annual income. Let's say the income was $120,000 for the year. We divide that by 12, and we come up with an average monthly payroll. we multiply that times 2.5. So in that example, payroll for 120,000 would be 10,000 a month times 2.5. That would be a $25,000 loan that would go to that business. Now the intent is for the owner to take that 25,000 and bring their employees back and pay them $10,000 in April, mid-April to mid-May, and mid-May to mid-June. And okay, and that would be 20 of the 25,000. The other 5,000 can be used for rent, utilities, or interest on loans. So you can make the other 5,000 forgivable if you can prove rent, utilities, and or interest on other loans that are directly related to the business. So that's the tricky part, that they'll come back and say, okay, this is what you need to show us a payroll report, you'll need to show us your rent, we'll need to have evidence of this, and if you provide all that, the $25,000 loan will essentially be a grant.
So basically, a small business that is still in operation is not going to be able to apply for this. Is that correct?
Oh, if it's not in operation?
It is in operation.
Oh, sure. Yeah. They have got to be in business by February 15th. If they started prior to February 15th, 2020, they can apply. Now, what you got to think about is if a business started, and I had one of these that started in November of last year. They started in November. They've only been in operation for 5 months. The SBA will allow us to take quarterly information and annualize it. I mean, they've been extremely flexible with this program. They'll let us take the first quarter 941. So if they were up and running January, February, March, they will let us take the 941 for the first quarter of 2020, annualize it, divided by 12 times 2.5, there's your loan amount.
Wow. Okay. Well, that kind of reinforces what Amanda's saying. This is a one-time deal that makes a lot of sense for small businesses to take advantage of, even if we weren't in the middle of the storm. So, I think those are great questions, and it just reinforces again, there's a lot of collective knowledge and intellectual capital on this screen that's out there to help each other. And it sounds like, from what I'm seeing with Josh and other folks, that QuickBooks is probably a pretty good instrument to be able to capture this information, to be able to document what you're doing. But I think Mike hits on another good point. There's a lot of mistrust of government, and that has to be overcome, because this is something that they're trying to do to sustain an economy that's in stress at this particular stage. And that's why it's good to have Sharon. I can't thank you enough for putting this type of program on. And hopefully they'll replenish the stock, so there's some more funds that'll come into the process. Amanda, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you guys have covered it amazingly. It's so good to have everyone on the panel. There's a question here I was hoping Jim could answer for us, because I don't know the answer. And it's, does interest on loans does it include loans for company vehicles? My understanding, it was just interest on mortgages, but maybe there is more to that. Jim, do you have an answer for that?
On the application, there are 4 check boxes when you fill out the application, I'm going to grab one right here, because we actually had 2 applications, as you know. We had one application the first part of the week, and then they came back with another one. It says payroll, lease, mortgage interest, utilities, and others. So what it's intended to do is to pay the interest on your mortgage. So some people rent, some people have a mortgage at the bank. And in many cases, your mortgage payment is very close to what your rent would be. So I think they were trying to figure out some way to enable them. Now there's a box that says other. That is a good question. I've had that question come up before. Can you use it for vehicles and things like that? I don't have the answer to that. I think, to be safe, I would stick with mortgage interest, rent, and most people don't have mortgage interest and rent. You either own your building or you're renting. So I would stick with mortgage interest right now to be safe.
Perfect. The other one I wanted to just mention to everyone, and Jim touched on this briefly, that sole proprietors and independent contractors the system has been opened up for them to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program as of April 10th. So last Friday, that happened. And I know that that is a new process for all of us, and really unheard of at this level. So we're super excited for it. And one of the questions here is, how does an independent contractor, for example, like a realtor, apply for the loan? If I understand correctly, Jim, it's the same application, right? And they just use their Schedule C or their K or whatever they're doing for taxes for 2019.
Yeah, it'd be Schedule C.
See.
Yeah. One thing's interesting, and we got a guidance on this yesterday. Our bank is a big ag bank. We, about 30% of our business are farmers. So farmers can actually apply, and they use Schedule F. And the way we derive their income is we take Schedule F, which is all the farm income minus expenses. And at the end of the day, you have a net profit. That net profit is the farmer's salary. You would take that divided by 12 times 2.5. They will not let you add back depreciation. We were hopeful, and we really pushed to see if the farmers would be able to add back depreciation, because it's a non-cash expense, and it's a big part of the farm industry because they have so much equipment. But the ruling came back yesterday that you cannot use depreciation, add it back for either Schedule C or Schedule F.
Well, one of the things that I've heard from local retailers that have applied for the PPP is that they found it easier to do than they had anticipated and were successful at it. But I think what I also have learned is that they've had a relationship with a local bank that allowed them to, go to those folks. And I know some of the banks really have kind of like a check sheet: do this, do this, do this, do this. And that's really streamlined the process and gave you some confidence at a time where, you're going in and where's my, paycheck at type of thing. And it's not as streamlined as you would hope it to be. Some great questions over in the chat room. They're all kind of getting answered by each other. Anything else you want to throw out there? We're getting close to the 10 o'clock hour type of thing, but we're not bound necessarily by a clock. If you've got questions, now's a good time to put them out there.
Bruce, can I take a moment to add one thing? Because I know some people have asked this in the chat, but I also know it's probably on everyone's mind. Is going back to the EIDLs. We have a lot of folks who have applied for that loan in particular, and even the loan advance that may come with that. I didn't talk about that earlier, but there is a small portion that you could be granted that's forgiven, and that equates to $1,000 per full-time employee, up to 10 employees. And a lot of our folks have applied for that, but haven't heard anything back. And I just wanted to let you know that everyone's in the same boat. It's not just you. If you've applied and submitted your application, you will hear back. It's not as quick as we would have liked, but we also understand the demand for these, and they are first come, first serve. And Virginia, while our governor acted very quickly, there were other states way ahead of us in mitigation of this disaster because it hit them first. And much larger states, New York, California, some of our hot spots, were declared disaster first. So we're not necessarily first in line for these, so it may take some time. There isn't, unfortunately, a way to check the where your loan is at online. I wish there was, but that was something that, because this is such a separate process from their normal lending process, there's no way to go in and check, like if you have a confirmation number. I do have an SBA number that I'll be glad to read out that you can call. I know there are long wait lines, but that's really the only way to get in touch with the SBA right now, if you wanted to check on it. But again, I want to tell you, actually yesterday was the first time we started hearing from folks that they've heard back, literally yesterday. So we know that now our folks are in the queue and they should be hearing back anytime now. But the SBA number is 1-800-659 2955. It's 1-800-659-2955. If you need to call them and get an update. But at this point, I wouldn't do that just because you're in the same boat with everyone else. But I just wanted you to know that it's okay. We promise that your application's being reviewed. One client did tell me that they saw a check on their credit report by the SBA and got word that they had the advance and started submitting other application documents for the process a couple days later. So that was a good indicator to them that, okay, I'm going to hear back any day now. So if you have access to check your credit report from one of the services that does that, that might be a way that you can keep your eye on when your application is being reviewed. Just kind of a little insider tip there.
Excellent. Excellent.
Hey, Bruce, can I throw in one more thing? I don't think it's been mentioned, and if I'm repeating someone else, I do apologize. One thing that I've noticed, and then the small group business groups and things that I'm a part of, one big question or misunderstanding, I think, is the PPP can be forgiven, granted, if you follow the guidelines set forth, 75, 25, and so on. And then there is the EIDL loan and the grant that can be forgiven, but you can't both. And Amanda and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, both if you get the grant that can be forgiven, that comes off of the amount that can be forgiven for the PPP. Wow. They're both not separate. That was a big thing. I know when all this first started to roll out, everybody didn't want to leave money on the table, so to speak. And being a very small business, we didn't either. So we diligently checked into that. And I think that that's really important to know that you can't double dip, so to speak. And
that's
again,
right.
Amanda or Jim, you guys correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. You can't double dip, and the amount is taken off. It's still money in your pocket that you have available to you to use in the very immediate. So it is a good thing, but it is taken off the other forgivable amount at the end of the loan. But to note, if the PPP won't cover your expenses and you've applied for the EIDL, one, you can turn it down if they offer you a loan and you've decided that you don't want to take it. Which I think will happen a lot, quite frankly, and that'll put more money back into the pot for people to apply who need it, who haven't done so yet. But also, you can have both loans at the same time. And that's been a confusing point of all of this. You can have both loans, you just can't use them for the same thing. So what we recommend you doing is using the PPP for payroll and the other expenses that it allows, which is just a few. And oftentimes our smaller businesses are pretty well covered with that, but our larger, meaning 50 employees or more, are not at all covered by that. Their expenses allowed are far more than 25% of their payroll. And so the EIDL comes in to pick up those additional costs that the PPP isn't going to cover, even if it's the same type of cost, but the PPP won't cover all of your expenses. We even have some folks who are hiring right now, and so their headcount will go up and the PPP won't cover those, but the EIDL will. So there's lots of creative ways that you can use both loans. You just can't double dip for the same purposes. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's kind of like the hand in glove. You just kind of got to know what Josh you're dealing with. They're great thing to point out because, these are uncertain times. Anything else? Sharon, anything you want to say? Well, just from an outsider looking in, I applaud the leadership of the chamber. I know this is something that it was hard to kind of get all the cats to settle down and get into one queue this morning because they got so much on their plate. I thank Amanda, I thank Jim, I thank Josh, but Jenna and Leo and Josie, part of the team that Sharon's assembled over there. I've been in this world 69 years, and I've worked with a lot of chambers and a lot of stuff through my time at the community college. This is a very responsive group. Henry and the leadership that make up a lot of the chamber have got a lot to be proud of. Hopefully we can do this again, and if there's more information that'll come out. Amanda, I don't know how you all are keeping up with all you've got, but it really personalizes this by having these folks around the table today and knowing that you're not alone and that there's help out there. So let me ask Josie, how do you get access to this recorded? You mentioned there's a YouTube channel for now I'm an old prune, so I'm not sure I know all about that YouTube or TikTok or all that stuff that's going on. You'll probably send some stuff out to people to know where to find that puppy, I guess.
Yeah, so after this, I'll upload this video to our YouTube channel and then post it under this event on our Facebook page. So it'll be available there. If you would like it directly, shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to send it to you. My email is programs, programs as in Sam, at montgomerycc.org. And if you have questions or other programs or content that you would like to see, please send those my way. Our team is every single day trying to brainstorm of how we can best serve you, our members, and really what your needs are and where we can fill in the gaps. Also, please be sure to check out our COVID-19 resource page on our website. We have a ton of information on there. Amanda's information is on there. The links to the applications and information about the applications that the SBA has put out are all on that page, as well as some local resources. So please be sure to check that out. And if you need specific resources that you don't find there, again, please just send us an email. We're more than happy to help in any way that we can. But thank you all again. I'd just like to echo Bruce. Thank you, Bruce, for your time, Jim, Amanda, Josh, and everyone for your questions. I'm very, very thankful and glad that we have such a great supportive community of one another, especially during this time. So thank you again for your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Thank you all.
Thank you.